The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Hello, welcome to episode 46 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined today by the founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good morning to you.
Good to be with you again today, Kevin. And we continue today on the business pillar, and we have another great guest for everyone today. So what specifically are we looking at today then, Kevin?
Well, Guy's a hugely credible fellow in the world of both buying and selling businesses. And I think the focus from the last episode was the continuation of that, which is really selling businesses. And that for the most part, when you think about it, Chris, when you think about, we love the idea of business as an asset, don't we? We like the idea of beginning with the end in mind and thinking that you want to create something of value, and then that value you can either enjoy by getting a continuing form of recurring income, or you can create something that you could sell. And what's interesting, I think, is the whole concept where businesses started is they rarely get started from the point of view of doing that. They tend to get started from the point of view of wanting to create something. And it's that the fact that the business owners become business owners by creating the business, not buying the business. There's this huge discrepancy in the long term about the valuation of a business and why it's such an inexact science. And that's why so few businesses actually get sold. And I think Guy can lift the lid on that, I think, to some degree, is from a direct experience of working face to face with those business owners themselves.
Yeah, and we've received some great feedback actually since certainly episode 44 when we invited Dave Pearce onto the show to talk about the process of selling a business. And we know that many of our members are, business owners. They are looking to perhaps start a business as part of their, 7 pillars overall wealth building process. And we've got, as you mentioned, a really great guest today, which is Guy Bartlett. And Guy himself has built 3 separate businesses from scratch to over 7 figures in sales. And he's now the senior partner at the Fidelis Group. And, Guy is someone who's got plenty of experience in, as you say, Kevin, both buying and selling businesses. So there's a lot of good information that we're about to reveal with our conversation today.
Yeah, look forward. Why don't we just zoom on over and have a listen?
Okay, let's do that. Guy, welcome to Wealth Talk.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
You're very welcome, Guy. Now, I'm looking forward to today's conversation. We're talking about selling a business. But before we get into the details of that, would you mind just giving our listeners a little bit of background to yourself and how you got into this industry?
So I was, I would say I was a kind of classic employee. And in early 2000s, I thought I shared a business with another business owner, but we didn't have a shareholders agreement. It all fell apart. It was all very messy and unpleasant. And around about the same time, I was trying to find something that would inspire me to do things differently. And I always like to read books at Christmas as a time to reflect and a time to get inspiration. And I came across Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Cash Flow Quadrant. And reading that book was a light bulb moment for me because I realized, although I had some shares in a company, I just owned a job. So it was the start of my determination, really, to learn how to be an owner of a business in the genuine sense of owning an asset as opposed to owning a job. So I guess you could trace that as the start point for becoming really engrossed in and fascinated by the whole business of owning and developing businesses from an ownership perspective and not from an operating perspective. Really.
That's right. And we're talking today really about how every business owner should build that business in such a way that it can be sold if they so choose to do so. Now, in your experience, Guy, how many business owners actually do end up selling?
Well, it's a difficult one to be accurate in terms of the statistics because it's a private market, essentially. So whilst you can get statistics on larger businesses, corporates, and obviously PLCs and so on, but the private market is a tricky one to be entirely accurate around. But there's a lot of information sort of in the circuit, shall we say, that suggests, particularly for companies that go through the broker network, for example, the vast majority of business brokers in the UK probably sell, or certainly less than 10% of their entire book. So statistically, it's a difficult thing for a business owner to achieve a successful sale. It's quite a daunting number to contemplate, really.
And so what are some of the factors then which are preventing businesses from successfully selling? And what are some of the, if we almost were to do a checklist of some of the things that a business owner can start to do today that will position them best for the best value when they come to sell?
Oh, it's a great question, but it's quite a deep answer. So I'll start at the beginning. The vast majority of the businesses that we come across are owner-operator businesses. So let me give you some stats which will help the audience. So something like 96% of all UK businesses are considered micro companies. So that's businesses that employ less than 10 people and turn over no more than £500,000. So they're very much people that own a business, own a lifestyle effectively. And absolutely nothing wrong with that, but that makes up the bulk of the market. There are 5.7 million businesses in the UK. So when you think about the overall numbers, the marketplace that I'm interested in dealing with is that sort of 266,000 companies from the research that we've done that have more than 10 employees, but less than a corporate. So between 10 and 250 employees. So that's kind of the sweet spot, really. But even those businesses and all the micro businesses are generally speaking geared around minimizing corporation tax bills. And that's where the first problem comes for an owner looking to sell their company, because it's very counterintuitive if you're a business owner to consider paying more tax. I don't know many people who would naturally want to pay more tax, but there's only really two ways in the UK to value a business. One is net asset value, which is effectively the shareholder funds that you'll see on the balance sheet in a company. And the other, which is more commonly talked about, is a multiple of profit. Well, if you think about it, if the value of your business is based on as high a multiple as you can get, but you're minimizing your corporation tax bill because you're reducing your profits, then the two things are immediately contradictory. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so it's a really difficult one for a business owner to contemplate. So put yourself in the position of, most business owners are male with families, and they go home to the wife one day and say, hey, love, guess what? We're going to stop doing all the family holidays, get rid of the cars, really cut down on all our overheads so that we can maximize our corporation tax bill, pay more money to HMRC, but in due course, we'll get a much higher multiple for this business that we're thinking of selling. It's just not a conversation that's going to happen.
No.
So so that's really the core of the issue. So the best businesses that still achieve the best price are businesses that don't necessarily cut back on all those things to maximize profit, but they present themselves in a way which is more compelling to a business owner. So, for example, if I'm looking to buy a business, I'm interested in fundamentally two key questions. I want to understand why the business is for sale. I want to make sure that the motivation factors for the seller are genuine. Okay, it's really important that I feel that a seller of a business has the right reasons to sell, not always about money. In fact, very often that's not the most important thing, but it's the right time for them to sell, and that they have got a burning desire to exit their business, because the process of selling a company at times can be quite testing, both physically and mentally and emotionally. I'd say 80 to 90% of the selling decision-making process is emotional for a seller, letting go of the business that they've built up over their blood, sweat, and years. So for that sale to be successful, I need to be convinced that the seller is emotionally engaged in committing to complete the sale. And we look for the underlying reasons behind the sale. Second question is, why are they not selling to their management team? There's a double-edged component to that question. First question is, I don't really want to buy a business that doesn't have a second-tier management team that essentially run the business day to day, because I don't want to own a job. I want to step into a business that operates to a large degree without the owner having to do everything day to day. Otherwise, I'm just buying a job. But the second component to that is testing that there is second-tier management, but also that management team don't feel disgruntled or disappointed that they're not getting to acquire the company. That's really quite important as well, because there's no point buying a company where the management team feel they've missed out on an opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does.
Yeah. So those are the start points for me, and what we say to vendors is, that's the sort of thing that you need to be able to have thought through and be ready to explain in a very clear, logical way, in a convincing way, and actually that you've done the exercise for yourself as a seller, because it's a busy market out there in terms of brokers. Brokers are constantly trawling the market to attract sellers of companies. They make money by selling companies. They make money by charging a fee to go on the books in the first place, and then they hope to get a contingent fee in the sale of the business. But it's in their interest to convince the seller of the company or the potential seller of the company that this company is worth a fortune. So they kind of dangle the golden carrot of, oh yeah, we'll get you 6 times multiple, 7, 8 times multiple. There are buyers out there desperate to buy your company. Just sign here. And I've heard some real horror stories around some brokers that literally just hook people in, and they don't have a buyer, or there's nobody actually at the other end of that process, but they've got a fee from the seller. That's at the extreme end of the market, but it's still the same sort of principle most of the time. They are sales operations, and they're there to try to maximize their sales, essentially. So from a seller's perspective, you need to go through that exercise of, where are you in your life journey? What have you got set up by your business? Hopefully your mortgage is paid off or well on its way. You've got a nice pension tucked away. You've got investments that are going to carry you through your retirement. And then the sale of your business should be icing on the cake. If it's been a lifestyle company that you've held for 10, 15, 20 years, if you need that business to make all the difference for your retirement, that's a weak place to be if you're trying to sell your company, because you're trying to get the highest possible price, and you're probably looking at it through very rose-tinted spectacles, which is not the way that a seller would look at that business. The seller will look at the downside, the risk factors, and the stats on what happens to businesses after they're sold, not particularly encouraging for lots of reasons. So those are the sorts of things that people should be thinking about.
I wanted to ask you about that, Guy, because surely there is always that mismatch between what the seller thinks their business is worth and what the buyer is prepared to pay. And I take it that really just comes down to the due diligence process of actually finding out what that precise profit figure is.
It's a combination of things, really. One of the techniques that we use is we ask the seller to tell us what their perfect day is. Describe it. What does this sale do for you? What's life going to look like afterwards? And curiously, many sellers don't have that very clear vision of what they're going to do afterwards. They may have come to the reluctant decision that they want to sell, or they may have come to the very concrete decision that they want to sell. But often they've not done the next bit, which is, well, okay, what am I going to do afterwards? Because if you think about most business owners, they're very, very driven, committed people. To have built a business and sustained it for 10, 15, 20 years takes a lot of hard work, no question. Some element of risk-taking, some downsides. There will be bad times, difficult times, all of that sort of stuff. And you carry all of that as a business owner. So to reach the point where you make a conscious decision to let go of it, it's almost like a divorce. It's potentially really quite painful for that seller, even though they might be getting a 7-figure sum into their bank account. So the emotional component is more important than the money very often. So we try to get people to either tell us or think about, what does life look like after the sale? And if they've got a really clear vision of what they're going to do next, then it sounds convincing and they've thought it through. More often than not, they've also worked out what that costs. And if they've done the exercise in working out the cost, it's much easier to get a deal structure that becomes a win-win. It's no longer a kind of win-lose type battle, which most people think of in negotiating a sale. It's easier for the buyer to craft the solution where you've got clarity around what comes next than it is if that's not clear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And just picking up on something you said earlier, Guy, about making sure as a buyer that the seller has a burning desire to sell. And when we were speaking to our guest on episode 44, which was Dave Pearce, he was saying that, most business owners don't think about selling until right at the end. And that's perhaps when they're a bit burnt out and they've just, they're not perhaps in the best sort of mindset or stage of their business. And, what do you have to add to that?
Well, that's absolutely the case. And it, all too often, it's quite a sad situation where you come across sellers who are ill, or they've had a heart attack, or they've got cancer, or their wife's become ill. And you see people going through the pain of dealing with illness or bereavement or possibly even divorce, at a time when really they should be celebrating all they've achieved in the business, but they're faced with the sale because of an external event of that nature. So you're absolutely right that the earlier that people can try to see their business as an asset, there's a guy called Bradley Sugars, Brad at all? Come across him?
We do indeed. We have many action coaches in the community.
Okay, so I'm a big fan of Brad. I've met him a few times. And I love his description of a business, a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without me. And very few business owners I've met in the course of all the time I've been doing this now actually run their business in that way, or almost none of them. I can think on the fingers of one hand business owners who have turned their business into a sausage machine. And so whenever I talk about the subject, I always implore business owners to try to change their mindset to think in those terms. And to get the best value in selling your business, you've got to be able to step away from it. You've got to create the structure and the organization, what I call the sausage machine, in such a way that that business genuinely can work without you. And that's really difficult because most business owners are control freaks. They run scared of people that they employ getting it wrong, letting them down, costing them money, all of those kind of things. And they've probably tried it. They've probably employed people in the past to one degree or another and experienced that disappointment. So it's quite a common thing to come across. And again, it's the same kind of dilemma that they have in, as you said, suddenly waking up at lastminute.com thinking, oh, I need to sell. And that whole sort of thought process requires quite a lot of deep contemplation to change your mindset and to think differently. Let me give you an example. One of my mentees was talking to a couple of guys that were interested in selling their business. And I went with him to the meeting to meet them in London. And this is before Christmas. Now, they are in their mid to late 40s, young family. And I said to them, guys, why are you selling this business? Before we get into the numbers, what's behind it? And they said, well, we were approached by a business broker. I won't name who it was, but they approached them and not unreasonably, they said, okay, what do you think the business is worth? And the business broker gave them genuinely just utterly fanciful, ridiculous 7-figure number. And once that genie's out of the bottle, it's really hard for a business owner to put it back. They heard the number, instinctively knew that it was a bit of nonsense, but it's really difficult. It's like an estate agent saying, oh yeah, your house will sell for £1 million. And you know that the next nearest house down the road has only sold for 600 or 800. But humans being what they are, it's really difficult to get that million out of your head. So that was the start point. I said, okay, well, let's look at the numbers in this business. And we looked at the performance of the company, and it was okay. It was a genuine classic lifestyle business. It was earning them reasonable money, not life-changing money, but they were doing okay. And I said to them, fellas, think about it. The number of years of profit based on your current performance that you would need to make, number of years you'd need to have to generate the sale figure that this broker is recommending to you, would you wait that long? And they both looked at me and said, no, not really. I said, so it's not worth that number. It's just pure common sense. If a business makes £250,000 profit and someone is saying to you your business is worth £6 million, do the maths. Just divide 6 million by 250, and the number of years is completely unrealistic unless the business is going to go through a step change in growth. So it's a simplicity that is needed in these sort of things to help people find their way through. So what I did next, Chris, was I said to them, look, what do you really want from the business? And this is where it got interesting, because they confessed all the things that I know, because I've been there, is it's hard work, it's risky, it's tough. You get customers that don't want to pay the bills on time. All the stuff that business owners experience is what they were experiencing. So the reason why their heads were turned by this broker was because it's bloody hard work. And there are times when you question what you're doing, you're not seeing your family, you're putting in long hours, you're taking the stress, and you're wondering why you're doing it. And that's all familiar stuff for any business owner. And I said to them, look, guys, spend Christmas, go away and work out what you want this business to deliver for you over the next 4 or 5 years. When you get to 50, get yourself into a position where that business is delivering the outcome that you want, rather than thinking about a sale price, because then if you decide to sell it, it's a whole different ballgame. So that was the conversation. They came back and just, sent a message saying, we really, really appreciate the advice you gave us. So it was a little bit odd, because I kind of advised my mentee to walk away from the sale, because there wasn't really a sale that was going to work on a win-win basis. But hopefully that's a good illustration of the point that you were making, Chris.
No, it's really good, Guy, and it emphasizes something that myself and Kevin and many of our guests on Wealth Talk have said, is that you really have to begin with the end in mind and getting clear on the purpose, as you've just explained right there. And one of the things that I'm sure many buyers look for is predictability. And one of the best ways to achieve predictability, we believe, is through having a recurring income model. What's your view on that, Guy?
100%. I call them bog roll companies. Everybody has to use toilet paper every day. And I'm interested in businesses that supply services and goods that every other business has to use on a recurring basis. So that component of forecastable revenue stream that you can rely on post-sale is taken care of in the deal. So your focus is not on where sales going to come from. Your focus is on operational improvement, enhancing the management team, and all those kind of important, crucial components in a business that often are overlooked by a business owner because it does what he wants it to do. And if I don't have to worry about sales for the next 12 months, then that's brilliant. That's my start point, really.
So, Guy, if anyone wants to just get in touch with you, find out more about Fidelis Group, where's the best place for them to do that?
So there's tons of information on our website, which is just thefidelisgroup.co.uk. We've got some case studies and we've got some free resources. We also have on there a calculator which will give you a value of your business. It's free to use, but it obviously gives you a start point. So anyone interested in what their business might be worth now, if they go to that website, thefidelisgroup.co.uk, you can find the calculator on there and it will give you a pretty good idea of what your start point is. So hopefully that's helpful to listeners as well.
Guy, thanks so much for sharing with us on Wealth Talk today.
That's a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so that was great and interesting figures there that Guy revealed. Certainly 5.7 million businesses in the UK, of which 96% of those what are called micro companies, which is less than 10 employees and generating under £500,000 per year turnover.
Yeah, there's a curious thing for me. If you were to check out the Sunday Times Rich List or the equivalent in America, the Forbes list, you'll see it's completely now overrun with the massive value created by business owners. So if you're in the race of being a business owner or wanting to be one, you're in the right place. There's massive, massive gains to be made. Yet tragically, so few make them because most people get into business as an alternative to a job, and then the business becomes a lifestyle. And in fact, Chris, 1 million of those businesses, so if there's roughly 6 million businesses, I like to use round numbers. Mind you, how many of those are still trading? Of the 6 million, I don't know. But of the 6 million, say, 1 million of those businesses have no employees at all. So it's absolutely a lifestyle. And what we're saying is there's nothing wrong with that, because then you're creating your work, your wealth dynamic, your value to the world on your terms, where you want to work, how you want to work, whether you're combining it with family, you're getting the most from what you want. And I don't think we've got too much to say about that other than if that's the style of business you're looking to create, then in order to be wealthy, you've got to invest the profits from that business in some of the other pillars. So that's a key point. It's not a point that Guy makes specifically, but the point that I think we all would make is if you're going to invest what he calls blood, sweat, and years, you probably picked up on that point. If you're going to invest all of that time, energy, risk, all of that stuff, then you should be looking for a massive, massive ROI, a big, big payout. And the only payout worthwhile, that's the biggest payout, is going to be a sale, because it's the only time you're going to get a premium. If you can think about how to create extraordinary value, how to replicate that value through recurring income, and how to make that business work without you. And they're the twin pillars on business. You need a recurring income model and you need a business that can work without you. If it does those two things and it gives you a lifestyle, but you can also sell it, it means you've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I would remind anyone who's listening now to go back and have a listen to some of the recent episodes where we had 3 of the action coaches in the WealthBuilders community sharing different strategies and ways of looking at the business, be it the 6 steps that Mark Perry shared with us in episode 41, or the 5 ways to increase your profits, which Chris Henry shared with us. And if you really, really do start to, look at that and with a bigger picture, as you say, Kevin, with the end in mind, then it absolutely is possible to start shaping your business in such a way that when you do come to sell, it will be much more attractive to a buyer.
Yeah, and I think these are good words you're using, Chris, but the sad fact is most people don't do that. And I think as Dave Pierce mentioned on the last episode, businesses kind of arrive at the point of sale usually in a state of distress, usually tired, usually, fed up, usually either unhealthy or their spouse is unhealthy. There's something which has taken their eye off the ball. Yet for some people, and that's definitely my inclination, is I like businesses and then I like to create a business and then get to a place where somebody else can run that business so I don't have to, so I can carry on with my creativity. So I think for many business owners, I think they use the word serial entrepreneurs. Okay, fair enough. But it's a reflection of your true wealth dynamic. So if you've got a creative wealth dynamic, so it would encourage anybody to review which episode we talked about wealth dynamics, Chris, because that really does reveal an awful lot about your best way to build wealth. And my wealth dynamic personally is really geared towards business ownership and that creation of something. And then I'm not the right person to then take it on to the next level. I'm not really a great business runner. But once you understand that about yourself and you're humble about that, then you can have a fantastic life and a career and enjoying setting up businesses and then moving on and creating value either by keeping the value, because if you've got recurring income, you can just keep receiving it and your lifestyle gets to continue, and you don't need to be doing the work, or you could sell that business. So I think the key message for me is always recurring income, get the business working without you. If you can do those two things, you're always going to make great value, more value there than you can in your pension or in property or in other assets. The payoff is massive in business. So check your wealth dynamic. If it's the right sort of thing for you, and there's enough people around you. But as you listen to the recent podcast, Chris, I think what will be obvious is business is much more complicated. There's so many more moving parts than the more simple assets. So, it takes a lot more to work it all out, doesn't it, really?
It does. And Guy has actually supplied a 6-step selling a business guide, which we will make available. So if you're listening now, if you'd like to have a look and see what those steps are, then head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/selling a business, or click on the link in today's show notes and you'll be able to download that. And we've covered business reasonably extensively over the last few weeks now, Kevin, haven't we? I know there's obviously so much more that we could talk about, and we'll be moving towards IP. We had the wonderful Rob Moore sharing obviously some of his intellect around generating wealth from intellectual property in last week's episode, and we've got some more guests coming up really soon who will share how they also have taken different areas of intellectual property to start building their brand and obviously generating wealth for them as well.
Sure, but I think there's a hint at one thing that Guy made that we should really not necessarily pick up on and do it immediately, but one of the businesses that Guy has is the business of buying businesses. In other words, in an ethical and a win-win way, just as I mentioned a minute ago, there are businesses that sometimes the business owner needs to sell, and for good reasons. Then there's a marketplace to buy those businesses, and then where they become capable of creating recurring income or capable of being systemized, the old business owner just didn't do that, then there's an opportunity to generate wealth from the buying of business. In the same way as you can buy property or buy stocks, you can buy business. I mentioned at the beginning, most businesses aren't bought, they're created, but there is a marketplace for the buying of business. And I definitely think we should give that an airing. Maybe in a few weeks, maybe, in a future episode for sure. But I think that's one to revisit, don't you think?
That sounds good. Most definitely. Okay. So hopefully everyone listening has enjoyed that today. And of course, do keep on leaving us your comments. And we really enjoy reading through the reviews on iTunes. And obviously head over to Facebook and check out the Wealth Builders community inside of there. We'd love to see you there.
All right, Chris. So have we got somebody lined up next?
Shall we keep that one a surprise for everyone?
Oh, you love surprises, Chris, don't you?
All right. We'll see you on the next episode of Wealth Talk.
All right. See ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.